which is kind of common within consulting. And they're there for you if you want to peruse those. But what I did want to share is a quote that Satya has shared recently that was important to me, where he talked about if you want to be cool, looking at another company, but if you want to make others cool, join Microsoft. And this was pretty important to me because I'm at a slight disadvantage when it comes to being cool. So I was glad to know that wasn't the goal here. I want to real quickly go over the agenda. We're going to hit some Azure service updates first, and then we're going to jump into today's topic, which is the new Azure DevOps and all the announcements around that, and hopefully have some time at the end for some Q&A. So let me jump over to the Azure Service Updates portal. So here is the Azure Service Updates that have been released. We're going to go kind of over this week. Some of the ones that I think are important to highlight are there's general availability now for Event Hub subscription and publishing from Node.js and to Node.js. In this month, we've actually also added Go language and Python. So we're definitely expanding that ecosystem. A big announcement from a couple days ago was the GA on immutable storage for Azure Blob Storage. So for organizations that are interested in or required to maintain data for compliance reasons, this is storage that can neither be deleted nor updated. So it's guaranteed that once data has or information has been laid down, it will remain there. Continuing on, the general availability for the Azure availability zones in West US 2 and Northern Europe. This is separate physical locations within a region. It's just another way to provide a better and more assured SLA when it comes to VMs and hosting. And let's see, and then Azure API management, and I'm skipping a couple here for sake of time, but Azure API management updates, they're relatively minor, but anyone that's using that functionality, there were response content size limits on the 400 and 500 requests that have been updated and increased, and there's some new tutorials and auto-generated samples have been updated as well. Of note, it's been a little while since we've done these sessions, so there are 2, 3, 4 months of updated features that you can come to this portal and find that we haven't had a chance to go through over the last couple months. So please feel free to come check those out as time permits for you. All right, excellent. So let's talk a little bit about DevOps from the Azure DevOps perspective. So this is from the official announcement deck. So I've got some of the official sources of information here if you want to go check out what the team has posted to azure.com/DevOps. You can follow them on Twitter, and there are announcements and updates coming through that. There's both a forum and a blog also. So all of these links I will try to make sure are in the show information in YouTube in the notes. All right, so real quickly, let's talk about what DevOps is. Microsoft and specifically Donovan Brown came out with this definition probably about a year ago, maybe a little bit more, which is DevOps is the union of people, process, and products to enable continuous delivery of value to your end users. So the focus here is on the continuous delivery of the value, not on build and test. We sometimes get tied up in some of the tools or some of the sub-practices, but we need to keep our eye on the delivery of that value. So that's the reason or the thing we're going for. And why do we care? Why do we care so much about DevOps and about the process of developing, designing, building, testing, deploying, monitoring software? The shift activity causes these results. This is from DORA, the DevOps Research and Assessment Group. They are professional researchers. They don't do consulting. They don't do development necessarily. But their goal is to do effective research around DevOps. And so they've gathered these statistics that show a 46 times more frequent deployment cadence. So that's maybe terrifying if your deployments are painful, but the point is deployments get easier when you embrace some of these tool changes and process changes. Lower change rate failure, and then significantly faster lead times for both changes introduced into production as well as mean time to recover from issues that you're experiencing in production. So it's faster time to market, increased revenue. But Azure DevOps that we're talking about today is a result of us focusing on splitting the the 5 key offerings within VSTS more clearly to provide more flexibility for the way people are using our tools. There was a time not so long ago when the message was, use our repository, use our development environment, use our build pipeline, use our host, use everything of ours. That's how it works. What our pivot has become is we're going to provide best in breed options for each one of these areas and allow you to choose and to cobble together whichever tooling makes the best sense for you. So a lot of these icons and the experience that we'll go through in the demo in a minute will be very familiar if you've switched on kind of the new UI in VSTS. And you'll also notice throughout that VSTS still does show up some places. That rebranding is in progress, and I'm also working on rebranding, so I may say VSTS at some point in time. It's Azure DevOps now. So the boards, the ability to track work and plan work, the pipelines, the ability to build and release software, the Azure repositories. So this, is the TFVC as well as the acquisition of GitHub, and Git is moving us towards providing these repositories for software hosting. The Azure Test Plans is our test management tooling. That's, again, it's been there for a while. We're working on improving that as well. And then Azure Artifacts is what was package management plugin for VSTS, and is the same kind of concept. It's the ability to host your packages, your NuGet packages, your various artifacts, and then have them provided to your CI/CD pipelines. So the biggest change with the Azure DevOps announcement that directly impacts developers actually has to do with the Azure Pipelines portion. So I wanted to spend just a second looking a little deeper at that. We really mean it when we say any language, any platform, any cloud. Our goal is that you be able to build, test, and deploy. We've got listed here Node.js, Python, Java, PHP, etc. We're adding languages all the time as first-class citizens, but even in the cases that hosting your language of choice on Azure is not a first-class experience, the ability to containerize the application and then deploy it into a hosting solution within Azure, it is there. So you can build any language, any platform, any cloud, and deploy. That's our goal. The last kind of point on here is about open source and our engagement with that community. We're moving fast and furious, I think, to build greater engagement with the open source community. And so the big announcement here around Azure Pipelines is that you get unlimited build minutes for open source projects. This used to not be free. You got 240 build minutes, and those were free. And then outside of that, you had to pay. Also, the 10 free parallel jobs, these are the build pipelines. To have 10 build pipelines in the old model was, I think, $360 a month. This is now free, again, if it is an open source public repository project. So we're really trying to enhance that experience for open source developers and make our platform a true competitor for those experiences. So just in case you missed it, again, I want to double down on this. It's free unlimited build minutes for public projects, which is huge, as well as the 10 free parallel jobs. The build agents that are being used there can be Mac, Linux, or Windows build agents. Excellent. So to kind of recap on that, the point is choose the tools in cloud you love. Use our solutions. We will continue to work hard to make sure we're providing the absolute best experiences in all 5 of our offerings. We intend that you would want to choose the 5 that we've got, but in the case that you're more comfortable with Jenkins for your releases, that's completely fine. If you want to use GitHub and the only part of Azure DevOps that you want to use is the build and release pipelines because you're doing an open source project and they're free, you can actually install an extension from GitHub to use Azure Pipelines and do your builds and releases through Azure, and they're free. So use the pieces that make sense for your project. And with that, I want to show a little bit of the changes with Azure DevOps. If you're following the earlier content, the release pipelines and build pipelines are one of the big changes. And other than that, there's a lot of visual and UI changes. So I will show some of that, but I wanted to add something else into this as well. So I want to show Azure Deployment Center as well for app services and start there to get into Azure DevOps. So I want to show a real quick example of building an application service and wiring up that deployment rapidly, and then we'll go in and look at that project and what was generated. So I've already got a pre-baked Power Lunch if we need to use it, but I've got an app service plan, and I'm going to just stand up a new web app. And we're going to make this Power Lunch live. Okay, so I'm just creating a simple app service plan. If you've been through this experience, or app service rather, if you've been through this experience before, we're going to get kind of a pre-hello world out of this. It's not even going to be a hello world yet. Should be pretty quick. Okay. Okay, let's let that load. So now that we've got this, I want to show you the deployment center that I'm talking about. So it's in preview right now, but this is a very quick and rapid way for us to wire up CI/CD to deploy to this exact app service from a repo that already exists. So I'm going to choose to start with, you notice here you can do VSTS, GitHub, Bitbucket, Git. You can pull files directly off of Dropbox if that's how you're doing source control management. But I'm going to do VSTS to start with. And I'm also going to use the VSTS, again, this is one of those places where branding has to catch up, the Azure DevOps continuous delivery model. So I have my DAPE-MS Team Services account, and I will choose Power Lunch because I already have a repository. I have just a simple static website published here. You choose where you want to pull the source code from and then what web application framework you're building for it. If you notice here, we've got ASP.NET, Core, Node.js, PHP, Python. And then static web app is what I've chosen to do here. I'm going to hit continue. You can enable load testing for it to send some amount of load to the default endpoints of your application. Obviously it's not a customized load test, but it gets you started on that experience if you want to build out load tests, and hit finish. What this is going to do in the background is it's actually going to go into Azure DevOps, stand up a build pipeline, a release pipeline, and then do an initial deployment to that app service. So if we go back to the app service real quick, this is what it looks like beforehand. And I'm going to go to the pre-baked one to show what this builds out to start with. So let's go here. This is my Azure Power Lunch Azure DevOps project. And I'm going to go into the pipelines and show that it created, this is like I said, my pre-baked one, Power Lunch CI, and it stood up a build pipeline. Now for a static web app, this is literally just zipping up the deliverable files, and then the release pipeline is just using that zip file to deploy it into the Azure App Service. So we'll have to, on maybe another session, go into more detail if anyone's interested in the CI/CD pipeline details. So, okay.
Sit.
And so,
Sit.
I'm sorry, can you mute, please? Okay. So the app service is up and running. Let's see. Here's this. Let's see if the next one has come up yet. Yeah, okay. So this was just created. Since this has been created, I'm going to go and look, and it looks like the build has already happened. Let's take a look at the release, see if it's in progress. Okay. So we've got a release in progress, and as soon as that's completed, we'll see that already the code that was hosted in that repo has been published to our app service. While we're in here, I want to take a look at, this is somebody might be noticing that we only have boards, repos, and pipelines turned on for this project. This is one of the new changes with Azure DevOps. You can opt into or out of each of the services as desired. So if you don't want to do package management with us, that's fine. You can turn off, as I have. I can turn it back on. Testing, I had it turned off. And by simply coming back out of settings here, I now have test plans available to me I have artifacts available to me. So the point is you can turn, if the person running your Azure DevOps project wanted to only use the pipelines to do build and release from GitHub and publish it to wherever, they could turn off the work item tracking, the code repository, they could turn off the test plans, the artifacts, and only have pipelines in here. Okay, so our release is completed. So let's go take a look, refresh the page. And there we go. So we just have a very simple static website that's been deployed as from that deployment center. So again, the deployment center, I want to be very clear. The deployment center itself is not part of the Azure DevOps announcement. It is part of the direction we're headed with trying to make the build, release, deployment, and monitoring of software an easier experience and faster to move. So the Azure DevOps changes actually are the branding and UI changes, the separating out of the build and release pipelines so that you can consume those without having to have your repository within Azure itself, and the ability to turn on and off the various features. I'm going to come back and kind of wrap up. So yeah, for existing customers, we've gotten a lot of questions about, what does this mean for existing VSTS and TFS on-prem customers? So for existing accounts, your current URL continues to work, and the redirect will be in place for a long time. There will be plans at some point in time to clean those up, but new URLs will, instead of having a subdomain of your account name, it's going to be part of the URL path. We have the new opt-in UI that I showed you where you can turn it on and off the different pieces. We have the Azure branding is being updated, and we will continue to see that. Websites and documentation will be moving to Azure-based locations with redirects. Then TFS on-prem will remain the name and brand of the application until the next major release in 2019, and that's when the new UI will be enabled and the branding will all be changed. From a pricing perspective, like I had mentioned earlier, public project usage is completely free now. So as many users, we used to stop at 5. You can have as many users of a public repo as you would like. Even the private repositories that used to be 240 build minutes, those have now increased to 1,800 free build minutes. So it's a significant, I think it's 7.5 times as many build minutes that are available for free. And then the other big change there is that the pipelines can now be used independently from repositories. So if you only want to use the pipelines and not the repos, that's fine. So new accounts, we mentioned the new URL and the navigation and branding will be turned on by default. This is just another recap. The free 10 parallel pipelines for open source projects, the update to the smaller teams with more build minutes now, and then teams of any size after your 5th user, if it's a private repository, the cost starts at $6 per user per month to add users to the full experience for Azure DevOps. And with that, I want to hit a couple resources that are available for you guys to extend the learning and continue, and as well as take some questions if we have some time. So Azure Dev Days, this is an event my team and I are putting on, and there are some upcoming tour locations that are coming to cities hopefully near you. In Tulsa on October 22nd, you see that we're going to hit Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago, and Edina as well. So if you are near any of those locations, this is a one-day event. It's free to attend. Lunch and breakfast are covered. We cover app services, serverless computing, microservices and containers, DevOps in a lot more detail than we were able to today. And there are interactive hands-on labs as well as whiteboard design sessions that we go through. So we'd be excited to see you guys come out to one of these events. Also, if you happen to be in the St. Louis area, there is a conference coming up October 8th through 10th called DevUp. It's not a free event, but there's the URL, devupconf.org, if you want to go get more details. This is a massive event, 1,200 people, many speakers that are coming from all over the country to present deep technical sessions all the way through soft skills sessions, and there are prizes, parties, lots of fun times. So if you have a chance to make it to that. And then I'm going to camp on this slide while we do some quick Q&A. I've got that we have just a couple minutes, maybe 5 minutes left. These are some other URLs if you want to dive deeper into our evolution to Azure DevOps, the updates around open source pipelines, the new GitHub pull request extension. So if you're using Visual Studio Code, there's now a built-in experience for doing GitHub pull requests. And then also those hands-on labs are a great way to get in and get deep and learn. So open it up to questions at this point.
Hi, Rick. What is the role of deployment center in Azure DevOps? I mean, I didn't get that quite correctly. Do we need to use deployment center to deploy applications into Azure DevOps?
Oh, okay, no, I'm sorry. And that may have been a confusing portion of the demo, my apologies. So no, the deployment center from Azure, all that is it's a quick start. It's a way to get from an Azure application service and build out your pipelines into Azure DevOps. So just like you could with VSTS or the prior versions of the tooling, you can go into Azure DevOps from a blank slate and create a brand new build pipeline, create a brand new release pipeline by hand. You can do that for sure. Just the deployment center was just a fast way to wire that up.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Hey, Rick, this is Sammy, CSA from Boston.
Hey, Sammy.
How are you?
I'm sorry?
Can you hear me well?
Yes.
All right, great. So yesterday we had a similar session with James Tramiel and a client. Actually, it was really similarly to, close to this particular session. The one thing that James has highlighted heavily is the extensions. Meaning when you go through the DevOps pipeline, you have a whole set of extensions that you really use, which to my amazement is you have hundreds of extensions there. So if you, for example, building, you could use Maven or Gradle, you could use Selenium and JUnit and JTest, the test side and the integration, you could use Jenkins and Bamboo, and of course the deployment, you could just Chef and Puppet and all these different tools, and an operation, of course, Kubernetes and Docker, which is what we have here, the DevOps services, an amazing offering from Microsoft. It's just, we went out way beyond in anything that personally I've ever seen. Make sure that this is available to everyone out there. So it's extremely powerful. I just wanted to mention this. I didn't mean to steal any time, but just the extension of this offering is very extensive.
Yeah, no doubt. No, thank you very much, Sammy. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's just for sake of a 30-minute time frame, we weren't able to dive into that a lot. But there are, to your point, within the build and release management, the extensions that you can bring in. If you want to do vulnerability scanning, security scanning, if you want to tie in Terraform to, if you're performing immutable infrastructure type deployments, you can, any one of those extensions. And yes, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of extensions that have not changed. If you were aware of the extensions that were available in VSTS, they continue to work with Azure DevOps. There's no change. You don't have to get a new version or worry that the old versions won't support Azure DevOps. Thank you for bringing that up.
Exactly.
Folks, any other questions?
Hey, I have a question. So with configuration of the build pipeline using YAML files, so I see a difference compared to the earlier one where we can select which language we want and we will be able to configure everything in UA. But with this configuration with YAML files, did we make it difficult compared to earlier?
I'm not sure I'm following.
Basically, YAML is the format that you can now download pipelines as code. I think you're mixing, maybe there's a mix-up between what language you can write your code in that you store in or you build through pipeline. You can right? Any language, Java, C Sharp, Node.js. But if you want to save the pipeline itself as code, that's YAML.
Okay, so which one is the default experience? Is the YAML one or the configuration via UI? I mean.
YAML one.
Okay, yeah, that was my question, because like whenever we land, we used to do it with UI, so it was pretty easy. So now when we start, when we land up in YAML, so it seems like everything we need to code.
No. Let me just be clear. I mean, you can do it through UI as well if you want.
Okay.
But you can save it as YAML, so you can save your whole pipeline somewhere. So just want to clarify that.
Okay,
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
By the way, in terms of the presentation, please go to the site azurepowerlunch.com. We will provide the link, or we're going to update the site to provide the link of the presentation. So what we will do is we will hopefully provide a kind of a link to the content from the future session as well as this session. So, okay. Any other questions, folks? Okay. Thanks, Rick. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
and
thank
thanks
you,
for everyone joining the call. Happy Friday, and looking forward to see everyone next week.